Hey everyone. Tonight we journey deep into a world governed not by written laws or elected officials, but by the infallible judgment of a poison oracle. Imagine you're standing in a small, humid clearing in the heart of Central Africa. The air is thick, clinging to your skin like a second layer of clothing, and the air hums with the sound of a million unseen insects. Sunlight struggles to pierce the dense canopy overhead, dappling the forest floor in shifting patterns of light and shadow. In this world, there is no Google, no Wikipedia, no court of appeals. There is only a question, a chicken, and a deadly poison. And frankly, considering the intricate web of social rules and unseen forces at play, you probably wouldn't survive this for a week. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know in the comments where you're re-listening from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see where these stories land. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You feel the damp earth under your feet, a rich, loamy scent rising with every step. You're in the land of the Azande, a vast territory that today straddles the borders of South Sudan, the Democratic Republic of Congo, and the Central African Republic. This isn't a single uniform jungle. Instead, it's a rolling mosaic of savanna grasslands punctuated by dense gallery forests that snake along the rivers and streams. This is where life happens. Your homestead, and those of your neighbors, are carved out of these forested areas, close to the vital water and the shade of the trees. The sun on the open savanna is a powerful draining force, and the cool of the forest is a necessary refuge. You trudge along a well-worn path, the silence broken only by the sharp cry of a distant bird and the rustle of something unseen in the undergrowth. You pass a homestead, a collection of neatly constructed mud and wattle huts with conical thatched roofs. They are arranged in a specific, deliberate way around a central courtyard that has been swept clean. You see granaries raised on stilts to protect the millet and ground nuts from pests and moisture. There's a quiet dignity to the place, a sense of order and purpose. The people you see, the Azande, carry themselves with a certain confidence. And why shouldn't they? For centuries, their ancestors dominated this region. Here's a core historical fact for you. The Azande, as you see them, are the product of a powerful, expanding kingdom that reached its peak in the 18th and 19th centuries. They were not one single ethnic group, but a ruling class, the Avangara, who conquered and assimilated dozens of other peoples, spreading their language, customs, and most importantly, their unique system of justice across this vast territory. But as you get closer to your own homestead, a knot of anxiety tightens in your stomach. It's not a fear of military conquest or foreign invaders. It's something far more intimate, far more pervasive. Your child has been sick for 3 days with a fever that won't break. Your best hunting dog suddenly went lame. And last week, a pot of beer you were brewing for a celebration turned inexplicably sour. In your world, these are not disconnected, unfortunate events. There is no such thing as coincidence, no random misfortune. These are all symptoms of the same disease, the same malevolent force. Mangu. Witchcraft. You understand Mangu not as a spooky story or a supernatural curse, but as a tangible physical substance. It is a dark, oval-shaped object that resides in the abdomen of some people, passed down from parent to child of the same sex. A father passes it to his sons, a mother to her daughters. Many who have it may not even know it, their witchcraft lying dormant and harmless. But in others, it is active. When that person feels jealousy, resentment, or anger towards you, the spiritual essence of their mangu leaves their body, travels through the night, and attacks its victim. It is the invisible bullet, the unseen poison. So that time you dropped your brand new phone and cracked the screen? Not clumsiness, witchcraft. Finally, an explanation that makes sense. This belief system creates a very particular kind of social reality. Every death, every illness, every failed crop, every stubbed toe has a cause, and that cause is a person. Your world is filled with suspicion, but it is a structured, logical suspicion. The question is not if witchcraft is to blame, that is a given. The question is whose? Who among your neighbors, your relatives, even your friends, harbors this ill will? Who is the source of the dark force plaguing your family? This is where a quirky little tidbit of Azande life comes in. If a man is walking along a path and trips on a tree root, he will often pull up the root and read it for signs of who sent the witchcraft that made him stumble. The entire world is a web of evidence if you know how to look. You can't go to a police force, there are no detectives to gather forensic evidence. Complaining loudly will only make your hidden enemy more careful. You need a way to see the invisible, to know the unknowable. You need a definitive, irrefutable answer. Historians still argue whether the rapid expansion of the Azande kingdom was driven more by a superior military organization or by the cultural appeal of their sophisticated systems of belief and justice, which other groups found compelling enough to join willingly. This very system, the one you are about to engage, was perhaps their most powerful tool of influence. It's a bit like having a magical, all-knowing judge, which, to be fair, would probably speed up the modern court system considerably. And so, you arrive at your decision. You must consult the great oracle, the final word on all matters of importance, the ultimate lie detector. You must consult Benj, the poison oracle. It is the bedrock of your reality, the mechanism through which the hidden truths of the world are laid bare. It is not about faith. It is an empirical test, a scientific procedure that, when performed correctly, reveals a factual truth. It is your supreme court, your diagnostic lab, and your guide for every major decision you will ever make, from choosing a spouse to planning a journey. Good luck getting a signal for your GPS out here. The only reliable guide you have is what this poison will tell you. To uncover the witch who is harming your child, you must put your trust in Benj. So the decision is made. You need answers and only Benj can provide them. But what is this substance you're placing your entire trust in? For you, the word Benj refers to two things at once. It is the name of the entire ritual, the solemn procedure of questioning and receiving answers. But it is also, more crucially, the name of the physical substance itself. A fine, reddish powder that looks as innocuous as brick dust or ground paprika. To a modern chemist, Benj is a potent alkaloid poison, a neurotoxin with effects similar to strychnine. When ingested, it attacks the central nervous system, causing violent convulsions, muscle spasms, and ultimately, death by asphyxiation as the respiratory muscles lock up. It's a brutal, efficient killer, but that's the outsider's view. That is not what you, Azande, believe. For you, Benj is not a mindless chemical. It possesses a soul, a spirit, and intelligence. Its power has nothing to do with its chemical properties. When you administer Benj to a chicken, you believe the spirit of the oracle bypasses the chicken's physical body entirely. It isn't about how the poison affects the fowl's nervous system. Instead, the spirit of Benj travels out into the world to directly perceive the truth of the matter you are asking about. It sees into the hearts of men. It uncovers the invisible emanations of witchcraft. It knows what has been and what will be. The chicken is merely a vessel, a temporary host. Its death or survival is simply the oracle's chosen method of communication, the way it answers yes or no to your query. You don't just whip this stuff out for any old question, like what should I have for dinner? This is for the big leagues of existential dread and neighborhood disputes. The poison itself is derived from a wild creeper that grows deep in the forests, far from the cultivated lands around the homesteads. For a long time, outsiders were fascinated by this substance, and a key historical fact is that colonial era botanists and officials put considerable effort into identifying the exact plant species. While shrouded in secrecy, it's now widely believed to be a member of the Strychnos genus, a group of plants famous for their highly toxic compounds. But knowing the Latin name of the plant doesn't get you any closer to understanding Benj. In its raw, powdered form, it is potent but inert. It is simply a dangerous substance. It only becomes the oracle. It only activates its spirit within the precise, controlled context of the ritual. The carefully formulated questions, the invocations, the formal way you must address the substance itself. These are what transform it from mere poison into a conduit for absolute truth. This is why not all Benj is considered equal. There's a quirky and fascinating layer to this belief. Different batches of the poison are understood to have different personalities. An old, experienced man who regularly consults the oracle will speak of his current supply of Benj, the way a craftsman speaks of his tools. One batch might be known to be very reliable and gentle, giving clear and consistent answers. Another might be fierce, killing the chicken so quickly that it can be hard to interpret. An operator using a fierce Benj has to be especially careful with his invocations, treating the substance with immense respect, lest it get angry and kill both test chickens, rendering the whole expensive exercise useless. It's like being a sommelier of deadly toxins. Ah yes, this is a fine vintage from the northern forests, very aggressive, with a hint of, "You're definitely guilty." Now the critical element is this separation of the substance's physical effect from its spiritual purpose. You know that if you just threw a handful of Benj into the communal beer pot, it would kill everyone who drank it, guilty and innocent alike. Its oracular truth-telling power is not automatic. The oracle reveals the truth about a specific social situation that has been presented to it through the correct ritual procedure. The death of the chicken is not a chemical reaction. It's a judicial sentence delivered by a spiritual entity. This distinction is at the core of Azande philosophy. Anthropologists still argue whether the Azande truly personified the poison, believing it to be an independent, thinking entity with its own consciousness, or if they understood its spirit more as a powerful but impersonal force of truth that the ritual merely channeled effectively. You don't have the luxury of academic debate. Your concerns are practical. The sickness of your child feels like a physical weight, a constant pressure in your chest. The sour beer and the lame dog are not just losses, they are insults, messages from an enemy hiding in plain sight. The suspicion is eating you alive, making you look sideways at neighbors you have known your whole life. You need the clarity that only Benj can provide. It's basically a magical truth serum for chickens, and while an organization like PETA would probably have some notes, for you, it is the only path forward. To use it, however, is not a simple matter. You can't just buy it at the local market. It is rare, it is expensive, and it is dangerous to acquire. Your resolve hardens. You know what you must do next. You must find a way to obtain some Benj either by trade or by undertaking the perilous journey to harvest it yourself. The weight of your decision settles upon you. Acquiring Benj is not like acquiring food or tools. There are two paths, and neither is easy. The first is trade. You could go to an elder, a man known for his wisdom and connections, and attempt to bargain for a small supply. But the price is high. Benj is a currency of its own, a substance of immense value. You might have to trade a finely crafted spear, a stack of the iron throwing knives that serve as a form of money, or promise several weeks of hard labor in another man's fields. It's the ultimate in-app purchase for the Azande justice system, and the price is steep. You consider your own limited resources and feel a sense of despair. The best Benj, the most reliable and trusted batches, are often held by the most powerful men, and you are not in their circle. So, you resolve to take the second path, the more difficult, more dangerous, but ultimately more empowering path. You will harvest it yourself. This isn't like popping down to the corner store for some Advil. This is a multi-day ordeal requiring abstinence, a good sense of direction, and a tolerance for digging in the dirt. Basically, a camping trip designed by a very strict pharmacist. The first and most crucial step in this process has nothing to do with the forest at all. It has to do with you. You must become ritually pure. For several days before you even set out, you must observe a strict taboo against sexual relations. This is non-negotiable. To the Azande mind, the spiritual power of Benj is delicate and is immediately neutralized or even corrupted by the residue of human sexuality. If you were to break this taboo and then harvest the poison, it would fail to work. It might give contradictory answers or simply kill every chicken it touches, refusing to speak at all. It's a powerful incentive to get the job done quickly and get back home. Probably the most effective anti-loitering policy ever devised. Once you are confident in your purity, you set out. You leave the familiar paths of your homestead behind, venturing beyond the cultivated plots of land and into the deep forest. This is not the managed, semi-domesticated woodland. that fringes the streams near your home. This is the wild, untamed bush, a place with its own power and its own dangers, both physical and spiritual. The air grows cooler, the canopy thicker, blocking out the sky. You push through tangled undergrowth, your senses on high alert for the slither of a snake or the grunt of a wild pig. You are entering the domain of the benj creeper, and you do so as a supplicant, not as a conqueror. You search for hours, your eyes scanning the endless tangle of vines and trees. You aren't looking for anything spectacular. A key historical fact is that the Azande name for the plant, Gabaguda, refers to a rather nondescript woody creeper. It has no vibrant flowers, no uniquely shaped leaves that make it stand out. Knowledge of how to identify it and where it grows is a jealously guarded secret passed from father to son. Finally, you see it. A vine, thick as your wrist, snaking its way up a towering tree. You recognize the texture of its bark, the specific way its tendrils curl. This is it. Your work now begins in earnest, and it is slow and methodical. You don't want the vine itself. You take a sharp, pointed stick you've prepared for this purpose and begin to dig into the earth around the base of the creeper. You are searching for the horizontal root-like structures that run just below the surface. After exposing one, you use your tool to carefully scrape away the outer bark, revealing a reddish layer beneath. This is the prize. With painstaking slowness, you scrape this inner substance off the root and onto a large, clean leaf you've laid on the ground. You must be careful not to get any dirt mixed in with the scrapings. This process continues for hours, moving from root to root, your back aching, your hands raw. You are gathering not just a substance, but a power. There is a quiet reverence to your work. You might even murmur to the plant's spirit, explaining your need, assuring it that you are pure of heart, and that your cause is just. Ethnobotanists and historians still argue whether the elaborate taboos and rituals surrounding the collection of benj were primarily to ensure its spiritual potency in the eyes of the Azande, or if they served a more practical social function by limiting access and thus increasing the poison's economic and political value. For you, this debate is meaningless. The taboos are essential. They are the rules for interacting with a sacred and powerful force. To ignore them would be the height of foolishness and arrogance. As dusk begins to settle, painting the forest in long, deep shadows, you finally have enough. It's not a large amount, just a small pile of reddish scrapings on the leaf. But it is incredibly potent. You carefully fold the leaf into a secure packet, tying it with a strip of bark. The journey home is a somber one. You are exhausted, but you carry with you the means to your salvation. You have the truth in a parcel. Now you just need to prepare the other elements for the consultation. You need the operator, and of course you need the chickens. You arrive back at your homestead under the cover of darkness, the small, precious packet of benj clutched in your hand. The physical ordeal is over, but the most crucial part of your journey is just beginning. The poison you carry is a key, but you cannot unlock the truth by yourself. A benj consultation is a formal affair, a piece of social theater with clearly defined roles. There are 3 essential participants, and you are the first, the questioner. As the person whose life is afflicted by misfortune, you are the engine of this entire process. You are the one with the burning need to know, and you are responsible for gathering all the necessary components. But in a matter this serious involving accusations of witchcraft against a kinsman or neighbor, it would be a grave breach of protocol to conduct the oracle yourself. It would be seen as a massive conflict of interest. You need an expert. This brings you to the second key character, the operator. You can't just yelp the best oracle operator near me. This is a word-of-mouth business, built on trust, experience, and a proven track record of not messing up the magical poison chicken ceremony. You must seek out a man known for his skill in this specific art. He is not a priest or a shaman in the way you might imagine. He doesn't go into trances or channel spirits. He is more of a highly specialized legal and ritual technician. Typically, he is an older man, one who has seen many consultations and has a reputation for being sober-minded and impartial. His job is to perform the procedure according to strict, ancient tradition. He will prepare the poison, hold the chickens, administer the doses, and, most importantly, recite the formal addresses and invocations that activate the oracle's spirit. The next morning, you take your packet of benj and a gift, perhaps a few bundles of razor-sharp throwing knives, and you go to the homestead of such a man. You approach him with deference, explaining your troubles and formally requesting his services. He might examine your bench, rubbing a little on his thumbnail, assessing its texture and quality. He asks you about the nature of your problem, not to solve it himself, but to understand the gravity of the questions you will need to ask. He's not working for free, of course. Expertise of this caliber comes at a price. Think of him as a highly specialized legal consultant, and his invoice is paid in poultry or other valuable goods. A core historical fact is that while almost any adult man could learn the basic procedure for using bench for minor personal questions, any consultation that could lead to a social dispute or accusation required an esteemed, non-related operator to be considered legitimate and binding on the community. His presence ensures that everything is done by the book. Sociologists and anthropologists still argue whether the oracle operator was merely a neutral facilitator of the ritual, or if his social standing and subtle procedural choices, like how finely he ground the poison or how much water he mixed with it, gave him a form of unacknowledged power to guide the outcome. To you, however, his role is one of pure procedure. You trust his experience to ensure the oracle can speak clearly, without interference. With the operator secured, you now turn to the final and most numerous participants, the chickens. Theirs is a humble but vital role. They are the living crucibles in which the truth will be tested. You don't use large, strong roosters. Instead, you select several small fowls, young ones that are easily handled. The reasoning is purely practical. They are common, relatively cheap, and they react to the poison in a swift and predictable time frame, allowing a consultation to proceed efficiently. Their job description is simple: show up, ingest a neurotoxin, and then, through the miracle of their subsequent survival or demise, reveal the deepest truths of the cosmos. It's a tough gig, and there's not a lot of room for career advancement. It is absolutely critical to understand that the chicken itself is irrelevant. It is a biological medium, nothing more. Its health, its spirit, its individual characteristics do not matter, except for one quirky detail. You must choose a healthy-seeming bird. Not because its constitution will affect the outcome, the oracle's power is absolute, but because using a sickly chicken would be like writing a message on a dirty, crumpled piece of paper. It is a matter of respect for the process of providing a clean vessel for the oracle to use. The chicken is not being punished or judged. It is simply a canvas. So now you have all the pieces on the board. You, the questioner, are filled with a desperate need for answers. You have engaged a respected operator, the master of ceremonies who will ensure the ritual is performed with the required precision. And you have the chickens, the silent, feathered arbiters whose fate will become your own. The stage is set. All that remains is to formulate the words that will be put to the test. You must now take the chaotic, painful mess of your life and distill it into the cold, hard logic of the perfect question. The moment has arrived. You, the operator, and a few close male kinsmen have withdrawn to a secluded place, typically by a stream, away from the noise and potential spiritual contamination of the main homestead. The air is still and heavy with anticipation. The operator sits impassive and focused with the packet of benj and a small calabash of water. The chickens are in a nearby basket, occasionally letting out a nervous cluck oblivious to their cosmic significance. Now, the intellectual weight shifts entirely to you. You have the full attention of the operator, and more importantly, the oracle, and you cannot afford to waste its time with poorly constructed questions. The most fundamental rule of consulting benj is that it operates on a strictly binary system. It cannot tell a story, it cannot offer advice, it cannot name a name out of the blue. Its vocabulary consists of two words, a yes or a no, delivered via the fate of a chicken. Your entire complex emotional disaster, your sick child, your suspicions, your fear, must be systematically deconstructed and rebuilt into a series of clear, answerable, yes or no propositions. It's the original flowchart. Does your neighbor secretly hate you? Yes, no. It's much more direct than a vague horoscope. The oracle isn't going to do the work for you. It won't just volunteer. It was a para in the fields with the evil eye. You have to do the social calculus yourself and just ask it to check your math. So where do you begin? You don't start by naming names. That is illogical and presumptuous. The first question must establish the fundamental premise of the case. You must first ask the oracle to diagnose the nature of the problem. A key historical fact about Azande belief is their clear distinction between different causes of misfortune. Ailments could be caused by mangu, witchcraft, but they could also arise from breaking a social taboo, or sometimes they could just be simple sicknesses with no spiritual cause. The oracle was the ultimate diagnostic tool. Therefore, your first question, carefully formulated and discussed with the operator, will be something like this. "O Benj, you are the spirit of truth. I present this chicken to you. If the sickness that grips my child is truly the work of witchcraft, you must kill this chicken. But if this sickness is just a thing of the body, if it is not sent by any person, then you must spare this chicken." This is the crucial first step. You are asking the oracle to confirm that you are even on the right path. If the chicken lives, your entire line of inquiry is wrong. You will not proceed to name suspects. Instead, you would go to a healer who specializes in herbal remedies. But if the chicken dies, the oracle has confirmed your deepest fear. There is a witch, an enemy, actively harming your family. This process transforms a vague anxiety into a structured investigation. It is a kind of Socratic method of divination. Let's assume the worst. The first chicken dies. Witchcraft is confirmed. Now your task becomes more pointed. You must create a list of suspects. This isn't a random process. You mentally sift through your recent social interactions. Who has a reason to be jealous of you? Did someone compliment your child's health a little too enthusiastically? Did you have a recent dispute over land with a neighbor? You, the questioner, are the lead detective, building a case based on your intimate knowledge of the community. This part of the process is basically you writing your own episode of a detective show, presenting the suspects one by one to the feathered, poison-filled detective. Once you have a primary suspect in mind, let's say a man named Akpara with whom you had a bitter argument last season, you formulate the next question. There is a very specific, formal way to do this, a quirky tidbit of the ritual. You don't just ask, "Is it Akpara?" You address the oracle directly in a poetic couplet. The operator might raise the chicken and say, "Bange Bange, you are in the chicken's stomach. I speak the name of Akpara. If Akpara is the one whose witchcraft harms this man's child, kill the chicken. If he is innocent, spare the chicken." The formality is everything. Cognitive scientists and anthropologists still argue whether this process of breaking down a problem into binary questions actually helped the Azande think more logically and systematically about their social disputes, or if it simply reinforced pre-existing suspicions by forcing them into a rigid confirmatory framework. In this moment, however, all you feel is the clarity of the process. You have your first specific query. The general has become the particular. The operator nods, satisfied with the phrasing. He begins to prepare the first dose of the poison. The theoretical part is over. The operator gives a slow, deliberate nod. The question is properly formed. The time for talk is over. The time for action is at hand. You watch, your breath held tight in your chest, as he begins the most critical and delicate part of his work. He is like a combination pharmacist and bartender, mixing the world's worst cocktail with intense concentration. You definitely don't want him to free pour. He opens your leaf packet and with a small wooden spatula, he takes a tiny pinch of the reddish Benj powder. He places it on a large, flat stone that serves as his workspace. Using a smaller, smooth river stone, he begins to grind the powder, breaking it down into an even finer consistency. The rhythmic scraping sound is the only noise in the clearing, a dry, gritty whisper that seems to amplify the silence around you. Once the powder is as fine as dust, he takes a gourd filled with clean water from the nearby stream. He adds a few drops to the powder, mixing it with his finger into a thin, murky, reddish-brown paste. He is a master of his craft, and you can see the decades of experience in the economy of his movements. He knows the exact consistency required, not too thick, not too thin. When he is satisfied, he adds a little more water, turning the paste into a liquid solution. He has now transformed the inert powder into an active agent ready to be deployed. Now he reaches into the basket and pulls out the first chicken. It's a small young hen, and it struggles for a moment in his grip before he soothes it into a state of calm compliance. He holds it firmly, tucking its wings in so it cannot flap. The chicken, for its part, is probably just thinking, well, this is an unusual turn of events. That water had a real kick to it. The operator takes a funnel he has fashioned from a tightly rolled leaf and gently inserts its narrow end into the chicken's beak. With his other hand, he picks up the stone slab and carefully pours the liquid benge down the funnel. To ensure the full dose is delivered, he then uses the gourd to pour a little more water down after it, washing the poison into the chicken's crop. A quirky but revealing detail is that this act of administering the poison is called giza, which literally means to wash, as though the poison is cleansing the situation of its uncertainty. The operator withdraws the funnel and now holds the poisoned bird in both hands. He raises it slightly and addresses it directly, but his words are for the spirit of the benge now inside it. His voice is a low, formal monotone, repeating the question you have settled on. Benge, you are now in this chicken. If the sickness is witchcraft, show us the truth. Kill the chicken. If it is a sickness of the body alone, show us the truth. Spare the chicken. He gives the bird a slight shake, a physical jostling to activate the oracle. Then, he gently places the chicken on the ground in the center of the clearing. And now you wait. The next part of the process is a period of intense, shared observation. A key historical fact is that this waiting period was not instantaneous. A verdict could take anywhere from 15 to 30 minutes to manifest. It's more nerve-wracking than waiting for a text back. At least with the text, the fate of your family and your relationship with your neighbors doesn't hang in the balance. Everyone in your small party, you, your kinsman, the operator, is completely still, eyes locked on the small bird. For the first few minutes, nothing happens. The chicken ruffles its feathers, pecks idly at a loose stone, and takes a few steps looking for all the world like a perfectly normal, healthy bird. A flicker of hope or dread, depending on what you wish for, passes through you. Is the poison a dud? Was it harvested incorrectly? Then you see the first sign. A slight stumble. The chicken catches itself, but a moment later its head gives an unnatural twitch. Then a wing flutters spasmodically. The neurotoxin is beginning its work. Toxicologists and anthropologists still argue whether an experienced operator could subtly alter the outcome by controlling the dosage of the poison, making it weaker or stronger, or if the natural variations in the toxicity of the wild plant made the result genuinely unpredictable. You don't care about any of that. All you see is the small creature's distress intensifying. It staggers in a circle, its balance clearly gone. Its movements become jerky, uncoordinated. The convulsions begin, subtle at first, then more pronounced, its small body seized by the power of the benge. Your heart pounds in your ears. The answer is coming. The oracle is preparing to speak its first word. The chicken's struggle intensifies. Its small body is racked with violent spasms and it beats a frantic, uncoordinated tattoo on the hard-packed earth with its wings. The sounds are sharp, desperate thuds that echo in the quiet clearing. Then, as suddenly as it began, it is over. The chicken gives one last violent shudder, its legs kick out and it falls still. A profound silence descends, broken only by the chirping of insects that seem entirely indifferent to the drama that has just unfolded. The chicken has officially clocked out. Its final performance review exceeded expectations in the field of dramatic exits and truth revelation. You stare at the small, lifeless bundle of feathers. There is no ambiguity here, no room for interpretation. The operator walks over and nudges the bird with a twig. It is utterly limp. He looks at you, his face a mask of solemnity, and formally declares the verdict. Benjeg GBU, he says. The oracle has killed it. He then restates the premise for all to witness. We asked the oracle, if the sickness is witchcraft, kill the chicken. The chicken is dead. The oracle has spoken. It is witchcraft. A cold wave washes over you. It is a strange and unsettling mix of emotions. There is the dread, the confirmation that a human enemy is actively working to destroy you and your family. The world suddenly feels a much more dangerous and malevolent place. But underneath the fear, there is also a sliver of grim relief. You are not crazy. You are not imagining things. The misfortunes that have befallen your homestead are not random chance. They are a targeted attack, and now you have the oracle's permission to treat them as such. A key historical fact is that the Azande had precise, simple terms for these outcomes. The chicken's death was GBU, it dies, and its survival was KPI na, it refuses to die. An entire legal or social judgment could be summarized and transmitted with just these simple, powerful phrases. But now you are faced with a crucial tenet of the entire Azande legal and philosophical system. This dramatic, definitive answer you have just received is, on its own, almost completely useless from a social standpoint. It is an incomplete thought, a sentence without a period. A single unconfirmed test result is known as a sorrow, which is little more than a piece of gossip or a strong indication. A quirky tidbit of Azande custom is that to act publicly on the basis of a sorrow would be seen as the height of foolishness. You cannot confront Okpara, you cannot demand compensation, you cannot even widely broadcast the result. It's kind of like a spoiler alert with no context. You've learned the what, but you can't prove anything yet. Why? Because the system has a built-in mechanism to account for error. The spirit of Benj could have been temporarily obscured. The specific chicken may have had a hidden flaw that made it succumb too easily. The poison itself might be overly aggressive. The Azande acknowledged that a single test can, on rare occasions, be misleading. To get a true binding verdict, a result known as a zera, you must perform a second corroborating test. This is not an optional extra. It is the very foundation of the oracle's claim to infallibility. Legal scholars and anthropologists still argue whether the two-test system was a genuine effort to achieve empirical certainty, akin to cross-examination or scientific replication, or if it was a social cooling-off mechanism, a mandatory pause that prevented people from acting rashly on the first emotional impulse of a verdict. Whatever the reason, you know the procedure. You must now validate this first result. It's the ultimate, "Are you sure?" prompt from the universe. Before you can proceed, you have to confirm your understanding with a second chicken. The operator sets aside the body of the first fowl and reaches into the basket for another. The tension in the clearing, which had briefly dissipated with the first verdict, now returns with a new and deeper resonance. Everything now rides on the fate of this next bird. The operator begins to meticulously clean his grinding stone, preparing to mix a second dose of the deadly poison. The first act is over, but the final judgment has yet to be rendered. The operator works with a practiced, unhurried rhythm. He is already preparing the second dose of Benj, grinding the reddish powder on the same stone, now wiped clean. The corpse of the first chicken lies off to the side, a small, still testament to the oracle's power. But its testimony is incomplete. Now comes the most intellectually elegant and crucial part of the entire procedure, the confirmatory test. This isn't a simple best 2 out of 3 situation. To truly validate the first verdict, you cannot ask the same question again. You must reverse the terms. Here is the logic, as beautiful as it is demanding. The first test was framed as follows: if it is witchcraft, kill the chicken. The oracle answered yes by killing the chicken. The second test must now pose a new challenge to the oracle, asking it to prove that the first answer was not a fluke. The new question is formulated like this: "O Benj, you have already spoken once by killing the first chicken. If that verdict was true, if you were telling the truth that witchcraft is at work, then you must spare this second chicken." This reversal is the genius of the system. You are asking the oracle to produce the exact opposite physical result to confirm the very same truth. A mindless poison, you reason, would likely just kill both chickens if the dose is fatal. But an intelligent, conscious oracle, a spirit that is actively communicating, can demonstrate its power by manipulating the outcome. It can choose to kill, and it can choose to spare. It's a beautifully complicated system. The oracle has to prove it's not just a one-trick pony that only knows how to kill chickens. It has to show it can do restraint too. Now the oracle has to stick the landing. The first part of the routine was impressive, but it's the dismount that gets you the gold medal in the Divination Olympics. A key historical fact that fascinated early anthropologists is that this corroborative test is the defining feature of the Benj oracle, elevating it far above simpler forms of divination. Its internal consistency and its method for self-verification are what gave its verdict such unshakable authority in Azande society. The operator finishes preparing the second dose. He takes the next chicken from the basket. The procedure is identical to the first. The leaf funnel, the careful pouring of the poison, the subsequent wash of water. He then holds the bird and intones the new reversed question, his voice resonating with formal authority. As he sets the second chicken down, a new kind of anxiety grips you. The stakes are now much higher. If this second chicken also dies, the oracle has contradicted itself. This is a disastrous outcome. It means the entire consultation is null and void. The spirit of the bench is confused, lying, or refusing to speak. If this happens, you are back to square one, having wasted a significant amount of wealth in the form of the bench and the chickens, not to mention the operator's fee. A quirky detail of Azande belief is that if a particular batch of bench consistently gives contradictory results, it is deemed spoiled. The owner might conclude he has broken a taboo, corrupting his supply, and he would have to throw the entire batch away. If the second chicken dies, it's the equivalent of your computer showing the blue screen of death. The whole system has crashed, and tech support isn't answering. Philosophers of science have often debated whether the Azande's two-test method represents a rudimentary form of the scientific principle of falsification, where a hypothesis is not just confirmed but rigorously tested by attempting to prove it wrong. For you, it's simply the only way to achieve certainty. So you watch the second chicken. This time, you are not looking for the telltale stumbles, the spasms, the loss of balance. You are praying for their absence. You are watching for signs of life, for normalcy. Every peck at the ground, every confident step, is a positive affirmation. The minutes stretch out, feeling longer than they did the first time. The chicken ruffles its feathers and seems for now perfectly fine. The oracle is considering its second verdict, and the fate of your entire endeavor hangs on its decision to either grant life or inflict death for the second time. The minutes pass, 10, then 20, then what feels like an hour. The second chicken, dosed with the same poison from the same batch as the first, remains stubbornly, almost defiantly, alive. It pecks at the ground, takes a drink from a puddle, and even makes a half-hearted attempt to chase a grasshopper. It shows no signs of distress, no stumbling, no tremors. It is, for all intents and purposes, a perfectly healthy, normal chicken. The operator watches it for a long while, his expression unreadable, before finally giving a curt nod. KPI na, he declares. It refuses to die. The oracle has spared the chicken. The oracle has spoken its second word. You let out a breath you didn't realize you were holding. This is it. This is the perfect result, the conclusion you were hoping for. You now have a zero, a complete, validated, and binding verdict. Let's recap the logic, because its elegance is the source of its power. Test 1. If it is witchcraft, kill the chicken. The chicken died. Test 2. If that first verdict was true, spare the chicken. The chicken lived. The oracle has answered yes to both propositions using two opposite physical manifestations. This is the inbuilt verification system that makes the oracle's judgment feel so utterly irrefutable. It preemptively dismantles any potential skepticism. You can't argue that the poison was just a particularly hot or strong dose because the second chicken, which received a similar amount, survived unharmed. You can't argue the poison was weak or ineffective because the first chicken is lying dead just a few feet away. You now have a verdict that is basically bulletproof. Trying to argue against a zero would be like trying to argue with a brick wall. Except the brick wall has the full backing of your entire society and a demonstrated ability to kill things. The two-test system elevates the event from a mere biological accident into a deliberate and intelligent communication. It's like the universe's most intense CAPTCHA test. To prove you are a truth-telling oracle, please select all images in which the chicken lives. By successfully killing one and sparing the other in accordance with the logical structure of your questions, the oracle has proven that it is a conscious agency, not a simple chemical. This leads to a foundational historical fact about Azande culture, recorded meticulously by the anthropologist E. Evans Pritchard. The Azande themselves never questioned the legitimacy of the bench system as a whole. When a test failed or produced a contradiction, it was never seen as proof that the oracle was a fraud. Instead, they concluded that a specific condition was flawed. Someone present had broken a taboo, the poison batch was corrupt, or another witch was using their own mangu to interfere with the oracle. The system itself was always considered infallible. Sociologists of knowledge still debate whether the Azande oracle system is best understood as a pre-logical magical belief or as a complex alternative rationality that operates with its own consistent, internally coherent, and non-falsifiable set of rules. For you, the result is simply the truth laid bare. You feel its weight. You now have a mandate. Your suspicion of witchcraft is no longer a private fear. It is a publicly verifiable fact. You can proceed to the next stage of your quest with absolute confidence. As the operator gathers his things, he casually picks up the surviving chicken. A quirky little custom is that this bird often forms part of his payment. This chicken has just had the worst day of its life, survived a poisoning, and now it's being repossessed by the lawyer. There's just no justice. For the Azande, since the poison's action is spiritual, the chicken is considered untainted and perfectly fine to eat or keep for laying eggs. You leave the clearing with the body of the first chicken, which you will dispose of discreetly. But you carry something far more significant: certainty. The first part of your problem is solved. The oracle has confirmed the what. Now you must begin the longer, more perilous process of discovering the who. You now possess a validated fact, a zera, as real and solid as the ground beneath your feet. Witchcraft is the cause of your troubles. While this is the gravest of all crimes in your society, the tool you use to discover it is not reserved for such dire matters. You have just witnessed the Azande Supreme Court in session, and its jurisdiction covers every conceivable form of social conflict. Before we continue your hunt for the specific witch, it is essential to understand how this same process underpins the entire legal and social order of your world. Imagine settling a modern lawsuit this way. It would certainly clear up the court dockets, though the courthouse would need a much bigger janitorial staff. Your society does not have prisons, police officers, or a written penal code. Order is maintained by a complex web of customs, kinship obligations, and the authority of chiefs. But when a direct dispute arises between two people and a simple agreement cannot be reached, you turn to benj. Let's imagine a different, more common scenario. A beautifully crafted spear one you spent weeks making has vanished from your hut. You have no witnesses, but you have a strong suspicion that a certain man, who has admired it openly, is the culprit. In a world without forensic evidence, it is your word against his. Here is how the system resolves the impasse. You would not stride into his homestead and accuse him. That would be aggressive and socially disruptive. Instead, you would approach him with a somber and serious demeanor and say, "My friend, my best spear is gone. My heart is heavy. Let us go together to the oracle so that benj can clear this matter between us." This is a critical step. The invitation is framed not as an accusation, but as a joint quest for truth. The social pressure to accept is immense. To refuse would be seen by the entire community as an admission of guilt. Being asked to consult the oracle together is the traditional Azande equivalent of getting a message from your partner that just says, "We need to talk." You know it's not going to be fun, so you and the accused go together to an operator. The questions are posed in front of both of you. If it is this man who took the spear from my hut, benj, kill the chicken. After that, the confirmatory test. If you told the truth and he is the thief, spare the second chicken. Once the oracle delivers its zera, the matter is finished. There is no lengthy appeals process. You can't ask to speak to the manager. The chicken has spoken and its word is final. If the man is declared innocent, you must offer a sincere apology for the suspicion and consider the case closed forever. If he is declared guilty, he is socially bound to provide immediate restitution, either returning the spear or paying its value in iron currency or other goods. This reveals a key historical fact about the Azande justice system. Its primary goal was not punishment, but the restoration of social harmony through restitution. The oracle's job was to cut through the ambiguity of a dispute and assign liability, so that the correct payment could be made, and the relationship between the two parties, and the community as a whole, could be repaired. This applies to everything. Disputes over unpaid debts, arguments over the ownership of a dog, conflicts over land boundaries. Legal historians still debate whether the poison oracle functioned as a true judicial system aimed at discovering objective facts, or primarily as a conflict resolution mechanism where the finality of the ritual itself was more important than the truth it revealed. A quirky aspect of its use in these matters is its predictive power. You might ask, if I accept my brother-in-law's offer of 3 goats to settle our dispute, will his anger against me be finished? The oracle is used not just to determine past facts, but to game out future social scenarios. Now you must turn this powerful legal instrument back to your own dark problem. The theft of a spear is a simple thing compared to the spiritual assault of witchcraft, but the principle is the same. You have the oracle's verdict confirming the crime. Now you must use its unerring logic to identify the perpetrator. The certainty you now possess about witchcraft is a heavy burden, but the methodical process you must follow is becoming clearer. The oracle is your path to justice, not just for the supernatural, but for all the deeply human ways people wrong each other. To fully grasp the legalistic power you now wield, let's set aside your grave problem for a moment and walk through another common high-stakes scenario, a trial for adultery. It's the ultimate lie detector test for a relationship, and the results are far more definitive than just checking someone's text messages. Imagine that for weeks, you have felt a cold distance growing between you and your wife. She is secretive, and you are sure you saw her accepting a gift of fine beads from a man named Geba, a man known for his swagger. When you ask her, she denies everything, and your questions only lead to bitter arguments. You have no proof, only a gnawing suspicion that is poisoning your home. So you take a small supply of your benj and 2 chickens and go discreetly to consult the oracle. The first step, as always, is to establish the basic fact of the crime. You are not yet naming names. You are asking the oracle to confirm your general suspicion. The question is put with solemn formality. If my wife has broken faith with me and has lain with another man, Benje, you must kill this chicken. The first test is performed. If the chicken lives, you return home with a profound sense of relief, perhaps feeling ashamed of your suspicion. But if it dies, and the confirmatory test spares the second chicken, you now have a validated fact. Your wife has been unfaithful. Now you move to the identification phase. Based on the gift of beads and other social clues, your primary suspect is Geba. So the next set of tests begins. You put his name to the oracle. I speak the name of Geba. If he is the man who has wronged me with my wife, Benj, kill this chicken. Again, the 2-part test is performed to achieve a binding zira. Let's say the oracle is unequivocal, the chicken dies and the second is spared. The oracle has named Geba. You are now armed with an irrefutable judgment. This is the crucial point. A key historical fact is that adultery was considered a serious crime against the husband, a violation of his exclusive rights. The guilty man owed the husband substantial damages, a payment known as GBU Giber. Armed with your zira, you can now go to your kinsman and then confront Geba and your wife. Her denials are now useless against the oracle's word. Geba cannot argue. To do so would be to defy the very fabric of Azande reality. He has been found guilty. Geba now has to pay the fine, which is the Azande equivalent of a very, very expensive and publicly adjudicated slap on the wrist. You would likely present your case and the oracle's verdict to your local chief, who would mediate the payment, ensuring it is in line with tradition. Harmony is restored, not through punishment, but through restitution. Feminist historians and anthropologists still debate the role of the oracle in gender relations, questioning whether it was a tool that primarily served male authority by controlling female sexuality, or if women could, in their own, more limited ways, use the oracle's authority to protect themselves from false accusations. What's clear is its pervasiveness. As a quirky illustration of this, a man might even use the oracle before embarking on a long journey, asking, "If I am gone for 6 moons, will my wife remain faithful to me?" The oracle was a tool for managing future risk as much as for prosecuting past crimes. Basically, it's a magical prenup negotiation with a chicken. Now you must turn your mind back to your own, far darker purpose. You have seen how the oracle's cold logic can dismantle lies and expose the truth in a case of infidelity. If its judgment is that absolute for a crime like adultery, Imagine its power when directed at a witch, a secret murderer who attacks with invisible forces. You now understand the precise step-by-step legal process you must use to unmask the enemy in your midst. You have a firm grasp now on how the oracle functions as the ultimate judge in conflicts between the living. But its authority does not end at the grave. Its reach extends into the afterlife, ensuring that the transition of a person's legacy from the world of the living to the next generation is handled with clarity and finality. When a man dies, he leaves behind a vacuum of power and a host of unresolved questions. And in a society without written wills, this is a recipe for chaos. It's the Azande version of having a will read, but instead of a stuffy lawyer's office, you have a clearing in the woods and the executor is a chicken. And far more decisive, when a man of any standing in your community passes away, he leaves behind his property: spears, knives, granaries full of millet. But more importantly, he leaves behind his social position and his responsibilities, including his wives and children. A key historical fact of Azande society is its patrilineal structure. An heir, usually a brother or a grown son, must be chosen to step into the dead man's shoes. This heir becomes the new head of that branch of the family, the new guardian of the widows and their children. This is not just a privilege, it is a heavy burden of responsibility. Naturally, this is a moment of extreme tension. The dead man may have several brothers and multiple sons. Old rivalries and jealousies can easily flare up. Who is the most suitable? Who is the most respected? Who will be the kindest to the widows and the best father to the orphans? A family could easily tear itself apart with arguments and accusations. To prevent this, the decision is taken out of human hands. The senior kinsmen of the deceased gather together, not to debate, but to put the question to the only authority that cannot be accused of bias or self-interest: benj. The process is methodical and fair. The names of the eligible candidates are put forward one by one. We place the name of Baimi, the eldest son, before you, benj, if he is the proper heir, if he will look after his father's wives and children with a good heart and uphold the family's name. You must kill the chicken. As always, a second test is performed to confirm the result. If the oracle rejects Baimi, the next candidate is named, and the process continues until the oracle gives a clear, validated zira in favor of one man. There's no contesting this will. You can't claim the deceased was not of sound mind when the oracle made its choice. Its mind is always sound. Once the verdict is rendered, the matter is settled. The named man is the heir. His brothers and other relatives must accept the judgment. To continue grumbling would be to defy the oracle itself, a sacrilegious and antisocial act. The oracle thus acts as a powerful cohesive force, preventing the fracture of kinship groups at their most vulnerable moments. Historians and sociologists still debate whether the oracle in settling inheritance tended to favor the socially powerful and obvious candidates, thus reinforcing the existing hierarchy, or if it occasionally produced surprising results that elevated younger sons or less prominent brothers, acting as a genuine agent of social mobility. A quirky and fascinating aspect of these consultations is that the questions could go beyond mere suitability, delving into the candidate's inner character. A question might be, if we name Baimi as heir, will he prove to be lazy and squander the family's wealth on beer? If so, kill the chicken. Imagine being able to do that in a modern job interview. If we hire Steve, will he spend all his time on social media? Let's ask the chicken. Productivity would skyrocket. You see now the oracle's immense scope. It settles debts and thefts. It adjudicates infidelity. It appoints heirs and secures the social order across generations. Its logic is the foundation of your world. And now you must return to your quest to wield this awesome power for its most terrible and necessary purpose: to find the witch who is not just stealing your property but stealing your child's life force. Your education in the oracle's power is complete. You have seen how its binary logic settles arguments over property, exposes infidelity, and secures the lineage of your people. Now, you must return to the dark seed from which your quest began. You must wield this power for its most profound and terrifying purpose: to unmask the witch in your midst. This is not a civil dispute. An accusation of theft is an accusation against something a man did. An accusation of witchcraft is an accusation against what a man is. The stakes are no longer restitution, but life itself. The process must begin again. Armed with your first zira, the one that confirmed witchcraft was at work, you must schedule another session with the oracle. More chickens must be procured. More of your precious benj must be used. You sit again with the operator in that quiet, secluded spot. But this time, you have a name on your lips. You have spent the night sifting through your memories, your grievances, your fears, and one name keeps surfacing. Okpara. The man who argued with you over a stray goat. The man whose wife seemed to look at your healthy child with an envy that felt sharp and dangerous. You will put his name to the test. The operator prepares the poison. The first chicken is held ready. The question is posed with a chilling specificity. Oh, Benj, I am holding the name of my neighbor, Okpara, in my mind. If it is the mangu of Okpara that is harming my child and bringing misfortune to my house, you must kill this chicken. The slow, agonizing process of waiting unfolds once more. You watch the bird, and this time, its death feels different. It is not just a confirmation of a concept, it is the condemnation of a man. The second test is performed, confirming the verdict. The oracle is unanimous. It is Okpara. It's a terrible sinking feeling, like finally confirming a wild conspiracy theory you've had about your neighbor. You were right, but you almost wish you'd been wrong. The abstract evil now has a name and a face, a person you see and greet every day. But what happens now is a masterclass in social management. A key historical fact, central to understanding Azande society, is that witchcraft, or mangu, is believed to be a physical substance in a person's abdomen, inherited from their parents. Crucially, a person can possess mangu and have it cause harm without their conscious knowledge. Their jealousy or ill will can activate it, sending it out to attack a victim even while the witch themselves is asleep. It's the ultimate "it's not my fault" defense. I'm not a bad person. I just have a malevolent, semi-autonomous organ that hates your guts. It's complicated. This belief is the foundation of the next step. Your goal is not to punish or kill Okpara. That would be murder, and would ignite a blood feud that could destroy both your families. Your goal is simply to make the witchcraft stop. To do this, you do not march over to his homestead and confront him. That would be disastrously crass. Instead, you take the evidence of your verdict and go to your local chief or his deputy. You explain the situation and present your irrefutable zira. The chief will then dispatch an intermediary, usually one of his respected elders, to handle the situation. And here is a wonderfully quirky and symbolic piece of Azande procedure. The intermediary does not go to Okpara with a simple message. He takes with him the wing of the chicken that the oracle killed to identify Okpara. This wing, called the gibasa, is the physical proof of the verdict. The elder arrives at Okpara's homestead, sits with him, and after some pleasantries, he places the chicken wing on the ground between them. This is way more dramatic than being served a subpoena. It's like, you've been served by a chicken, and it has some bad news for you from beyond the grave. Anthropologists have long debated the function of the Azande belief that witchcraft can be unintentional. Did this belief act as a social safety valve, allowing an accused person to cool down the witchcraft without having to admit to being a malicious evildoer, thus making reconciliation possible? As the elder sets out with the chicken wing, that very process is about to be tested. The accusation has been made not by you but by the oracle, and the evidence is on its way to be presented. While the chief's deputy makes his slow, deliberate journey to Okpara's homestead, carrying the wing that seals your verdict, let's pull the focus out from your personal crisis. The drama unfolding in your small community is a microcosm of a much larger system. The benj you have so painstakingly acquired and used is, in the grand scheme of things, a commoner's tool. It is powerful, yes, but there exists another level of the oracle, a version so potent and so exclusive, it is effectively a different institution altogether. The royal oracle of the king and his Avangara princes. This isn't your everyday, off-the-shelf oracle. This is the artisan, single-origin, top-shelf stuff. The king's oracle has a 5-star rating on Azande Yelp. The Avangara are the ruling aristocratic class of the Azande. For centuries, they have maintained their power not just through military might, but through the control of spiritual and judicial resources. Chief among these is their near monopoly on the finest quality benj. The poison used by the king is sourced from secret, jealously guarded locations, harvested with the most stringent observation of taboos, and prepared by dedicated specialists whose sole job is to serve the king's oracle. Its verdicts are considered even more reliable, more powerful, than the ones you have just received. A key historical fact is that the great Azande kings of the 19th century, like the famous Gebudwe, did not make a single important decision without consulting their oracle. The king's oracle master was one of the most influential figures in the royal court. The king's daily life was structured around these consultations, but he wasn't asking about sick children or sour beer. He was playing the great game of statecraft, and the oracle was his most crucial advisor. Having a foolproof lie detector that can also predict the future is a pretty good perk of being king. It's better than a crown, and way more useful for managing ambitious relatives. The questions put to the royal oracle were matters of life and death for the entire kingdom. Before a military campaign, the king would ask, "If I send my warriors against the village to the south, will the campaign be a success, and will we capture many slaves and cattle?" He might even pit his generals against each other in the oracle, asking, "Who is the better commander for this raid, A or B?" The oracle became a tool for strategic planning. It was also his internal security service. He would constantly be checking the loyalty of his subordinates, asking pointed questions like, "Does my governor in the eastern province harbor traitorous thoughts against me in his heart?" A fatal verdict for the governor could lead to his swift and silent removal. It's the ultimate political polling system. Will this new tax policy lead to a revolt? Let's ask the chicken before we send out the collectors. Political historians still debate the extent to which Azande rulers genuinely believed every verdict of their oracles, versus the extent to which they used the institution of the oracle as a shrewd political tool to legitimize decisions they had already decided to make for purely strategic reasons. A quirky tidbit about the royal oracle underscores its importance. The poison was often kept in its own dedicated sacred hut, and the chickens used were not the common sort found in any homestead. They were special birds, raised and cared for specifically for this purpose, ensuring they were the most pristine possible vessels for the vital truths the king required. As you sit and wait for the news of the confrontation, you can appreciate the scale of this system. The same power that the king uses to decide the fate of nations, you are using to bring order and justice to your own small household. The logic is the same. The authority is the same. The oracle is the universal operating system of Azande life, scaling from the highest corridors of power down to the most humble domestic dispute. And that system is now grinding inexorably towards your neighbor, Okpara. As you wait, watching the path for the elders return, you can begin to feel the invisible threads that hold your society together. The king uses his oracle to keep his governors in line. You are using yours to confront a hidden enemy. But the true power of Benj is not just in its use, but in its constant silent potential for use. It is a loaded gun placed on the table of every single social interaction. It functions as a powerful, unseen social contract, preserving harmony more effectively than any written law or police force ever could. Think of it this way. You live your life with the constant knowledge that any of your actions and even your secret resentments could be scrutinized by the oracle at any time. It's like living in a small town, but instead of just nosy neighbors, you have an all-knowing, infallible poison that can be consulted about your conduct. This knowledge is a profound deterrent. You hesitate to cheat a man in a trade because he could consult Benj to discover your deception. You think twice about an illicit affair because the husband could use the oracle to reveal your identity. But the control goes deeper than just actions. The oracle forces you to police your own thoughts and emotions. This is the most subtle and powerful aspect of the system. You know that witchcraft is activated by feelings of anger, jealousy, and spite. Therefore, you are actively discouraged from even harboring these emotions. You have to be careful about being too jealous of your neighbor's new, larger granary. Thought crime is a very real thing here, and the chickens will rat you out. If that neighbor suddenly falls ill, you will be the first person he tests with the oracle, because you had a motive. This creates a society that places an enormous premium on smooth, amicable, and peaceful public behavior. A key historical fact is that early travelers and anthropologists in Zandeland consistently noted the polite, almost placid nature of everyday Zande interactions. This wasn't an innate character trait, but a learned survival strategy. You learn to swallow your anger, to convert jealousy into praise, to be generous and agreeable. Everyone is super polite. Because being a jerk isn't just rude, it could get you formally accused of supernatural assault. It's the ultimate incentive to play nice with others. Social theorists still debate whether the oracle system should be seen as a form of oppressive social control that stifled individuality and dissent, or as a brilliant self-regulating mechanism that successfully maintained peace and order in a society without centralized law enforcement. A quirky and common Zande phrase reveals much about this mindset. After an argument, one person might say to the other, "Let us cool our hearts." This is not a metaphor. It is a literal plea for both parties to consciously suppress the negative feelings that could cause their innate mangu to activate and cause harm, thus preventing a future, dangerous oracle consultation. This is the social contract you all live by. You agree to behave, to keep your hearts cool, and in exchange you live in a society that is largely predictable and safe from the chaos of unchecked human passion. It is a world held in equilibrium by the shared belief in an invisible judge. And now, this entire system of belief, deterrence, and social pressure is being brought to bear on Akpara. The abstract concept of the oracle's power is condensing into a single point, a single confrontation. You see a figure in the distance. The elder is returning. The social contract is about to be enforced. The elder approaches, his face unreadable, and you rise to meet him, your heart hammering against your ribs. But before we hear his report, let's take a moment to consider the heavy price you have already paid to get to this point. A price not measured in fear and anxiety, but in cold, hard economics. Justice in your world, you have learned, is not cheap. So after all this spiritual and emotional turmoil, you also get a massive bill. It's like going to the hospital in America, but with more feathers. Let's tally the costs. First, there was the bench itself. If you traded for it, you gave up valuable goods, spears, knives, or tools. If you harvested it yourself as you did, you paid with several days of your time and labor, time you could have spent hunting or tending your fields, which has a direct impact on your family's prosperity. Then there are the chickens. You have used at least 4 healthy fowls so far, 2 to determine that witchcraft was the cause, and 2 more to identify Akpara. A quirky but telling detail is that chickens are a form of currency in themselves, used in trade and for paying tribute, so you have effectively spent a significant amount of your savings. Finally, there is the operator's fee. A respected expert like him commands a high price for his time and his sacred knowledge. This is the stark economic reality of the oracle. A key historical fact about Zande society is that while it was not a rigid class system, there was a distinct hierarchy of wealth and power. There were the rich men, the GBIA, who owned large homesteads and had many dependents, and there were poorer men who struggled to get by. This economic disparity translated directly into a disparity in access to justice. The wealthy guys use the oracle like a high-powered search engine for everything. Oracle, what's the best investment strategy for the coming yam harvest? The poor man is still stuck on dial-up. A man of wealth and status can afford to consult Benj frequently. He can use it to vet potential sons-in-law, to decide on the best time to plant his crops, to check on the loyalty of his followers, and to aggressively pursue any grievance, no matter how small. He has the resources to buy the best Benj and to hire the most esteemed operators. For a poorer man, the calculation is much more difficult. He might have to suffer a minor theft or a nagging suspicion in silence, because the cost of a full consultation is simply too high. For him, deciding to consult the oracle is like deciding whether that weird noise your car is making is worth the massive repair bill. Maybe you can just live with the curse for a little while longer. Economic historians and anthropologists still debate whether the high cost of the oracle was a systemic flaw that created inequality, or a feature designed to prevent frivolous use of the sacred institution. ensuring that only the most serious matters were brought before it. From your perspective, the cost, though steep, was unavoidable. The life and health of your child are at stake, and no price is too high to protect your family. This quest for truth has been a major financial undertaking, draining your resources and your energy. And now, the moment of truth has arrived. All the expense, all the ritual, all the anxiety has led to this. The elder stops before you. You look into his eyes, searching for a sign of what has transpired at Akpara's homestead. You have paid the price for the oracle's verdict. Now you will discover its consequences. The elder meets your gaze, his own eyes filled with the gravity of his task. He speaks in a low, even voice. He tells you that he went to Akpara's homestead, that he sat with him, and that he placed the chicken's wing on the ground between them. He says that Akpara looked at the wing for a long time, and his face grew heavy. Akpara did not rage or protest his innocence. He accepted the oracle's judgment. He has agreed to cool his witchcraft. He will take a mouthful of water, spray it out onto the ground, and declare that if he does possess Mangu, and if it is harming your household, he commands it to become cool and inactive. The threat for now is neutralized. You are flooded with a profound sense of relief. Your child will get better. Your life will return to normal. But the relief is thin, layered over a deep and lingering unease. The system has worked. Justice has been done. But now you must continue to live beside a man whom you know to be a witch, and who knows that you have exposed him. It's the Azande version of a deeply awkward homeowners association meeting. The good news is, your neighbor has agreed to turn off the malevolent spiritual energy that's been disrupting your life. The bad news is, you still have to see him every day at the stream. This feeling you have, this mixture of relief, vindication, and social awkwardness, is a window into the broader psychological state of living under the oracle's constant, unblinking gaze. It is a life lived without secrets. In your world, there is no buffer of coincidence or random chance to soften the blows of fate. It's a world without the concept of oops. Every oops is a "someone did this to me." A sudden sickness, a cracked pot, a withered plant. These are not accidents. They are social facts, evidence of a hidden, hostile intelligence. This fosters a state of perpetual vigilance, a constant scanning of your social environment for signs of friction, jealousy, or ill will. Yet, and this is a crucial historical fact observed by Evans Pritchard, this worldview does not seem to make the Azande a people racked with paranoia or anxiety. On the contrary, it provides a coherent and empowering framework for dealing with misfortune. When something bad happens, you are not left feeling helpless or a victim of a meaningless universe. You have a theory that explains it: witchcraft, a tool for investigation, the oracle, and a clear social procedure for resolving it. It is a rational system for imposing order on the chaos of human experience. Still, the pressure is immense. It's like having your entire life be a job interview for the position of not a witch. You have to be friendly, non-threatening, and have a good answer for why you were staring at your boss's new hunting dog. A quirky but powerful aspect of this is the belief in the evil eye. You understand that witchcraft is often projected through a simple, lingering gaze of envy. This makes you intensely conscious of how you look at others and how they look at you. You learn to perform a kind of public self-effacement, to never appear too covetous of another's good fortune. Psychologists and sociologists still debate whether living in such a high context, suspicion-based society fosters a greater sense of community cohesion through this shared, intense belief system, or if it creates a pervasive low-level anxiety that inhibits genuine, unguarded emotional expression. Life is a constant, careful dance. Your personal crisis has been resolved through this dance, but it makes you wonder about the instrument itself. Your faith in the oracle is absolute because its verdict was clear and validated. But what if it hadn't been? What happens when this perfect truth-telling machine appears to make a mistake, to contradict itself? The social and psychological stability of your world depends on the oracle's infallibility. But what happens when that infallibility is thrown into question? Your personal crisis with Akpara was resolved cleanly, but the question of the oracle's consistency lingers in your mind. The system seems perfect, a flawless engine of truth. But you know of instances, you have heard the stories, of times when the engine sputters. What happens when two oracles, both properly consulted, deliver flatly contradictory verdicts? This is the Azande equivalent of two different websites giving you opposite weather forecasts. One of them has to be wrong, and it's deeply inconvenient for everyone involved. Let's imagine that when the elder confronted Okpara, he did not meekly agree to cool his witchcraft. Imagine instead that Okpara, outraged, declared that he had consulted his own oracle the night before, and his oracle had given him a validated zira declaring his innocence. Now you have a social and legal crisis. Your oracle says he is a witch. His says he is not. The community cannot hold both of these truths at once. A decision must be made. This is where the apparent rigidity of the oracle system reveals a surprising, built-in flexibility. The Azande have a clear, established procedure for resolving such contradictions, based on a simple principle. Not all oracles are created equal. There is a distinct hierarchy of credibility. So it's not just what the oracle says, it's who's asking and what vintage of poison they're using. It's like a wine tasting, but for legal verdicts. First, you would consider the benj itself. Is your supply from a well-known, historically reliable source? Is Okpara's new and untested? An older, more famous batch of poison carries more weight. Second, you weigh the reputation of the operators. Was your operator a widely respected elder, while his was a younger man with less experience? The more prestigious operator's verdict is favored. Third, and perhaps most crucially, the social standing of the questioners themselves is a factor. A verdict obtained by a chief or a man of high status is considered inherently more reliable than one obtained by a poor commoner. If the dispute cannot be resolved by comparing the relative authority of the two consultations, there is a final court of appeal. A key historical fact is that the king's oracle was the ultimate arbiter in all matters. In a deadlock between two powerful men, the case would be brought before the king. He would put the question to his own, superior benj, using his own master operators. That verdict would be absolutely final, overriding all previous ones. But there is another, more mystical explanation for contradictions that can be invoked. You might argue that Okpara is such a powerful witch that his mangu was able to reach out and interfere with your oracle test, causing it to lie. This is a common explanation, and it is logically airtight within the Azande belief system. It's the ultimate "the dog ate my homework" excuse, but for failed legal proceedings. My oracle's verdict was perfect, but a witch hacked it. A quirky linguistic detail is that when a contradiction occurs, the Azande say the oracle has lied. They don't say it was a fraud or that the system is flawed. They personify the specific batch of poison in that one test, treating it like an unreliable witness who was perhaps intimidated or confused. Philosophers and logicians still debate whether the Azande's hierarchical system for resolving contradictions and their use of ad hoc explanations, like witchcraft interference, make their belief system closed and irrational, or if it simply demonstrates a pragmatic, multi-layered approach to truth-finding, similar to how modern legal systems handle conflicting testimony and evidence. For the Azande, these procedures are simply a practical way of handling the rare but inevitable complexities that arise. The system is robust enough to absorb the occasional contradiction without collapsing. This leads to an even more subtle question, though. If oracles have a hierarchy of credibility, how much of that credibility comes not from the poison, but from the man who administers it? The very fact that the reputation of the oracle ass operator is weighed so heavily when verdicts contradict pushes us toward a deeper and more sensitive question. How much does the man holding the chicken truly control the outcome? This is a delicate area, walking the line between sacred procedure and human influence. The Azande themselves would firmly hold to the official view. The operator is a neutral conduit. He is a technician whose skill lies in performing the ritual with perfect accuracy, thereby creating a pure, sterile environment in which the spirit of benj can do its work. A good operator needs a steady hand, a great memory for the long, poetic invocations, and a kind of solemn poker face. He must not let his own feelings interfere. But an outsider, a skeptic, can't he help but see the points where a human thumb could press upon the scales of justice? The operator has complete control over the dosage. Could he, if he wished to influence the outcome, use a slightly larger pinch of poison for the chicken he expects to die, and a slightly smaller one for the one he expects to live? He controls the preparation. Does he grind the poison into a fine, easily absorbed powder or leave it coarser and less effective? Does he mix it thoroughly with the water or allow the potent solids to settle? These are subtle variables, but in the life or death chemistry of the ordeal, they could be decisive. This raises the specter of conscious, deliberate fraud. But the key historical fact and the firm conclusion of the anthropologist E. Evans Pritchard, who witnessed countless consultations, is that this was likely exceedingly rare. The operators were not cynical manipulators. They were, by and large, devout believers in the very system they were administering. For an operator to deliberately cheat would be an act of profound sacrilege. It would be like a priest knowingly serving poison at communion. It would undermine the fabric of his own reality, and, if discovered, would utterly destroy his reputation and social standing. A more plausible and more interesting explanation is the role of unconscious influence. An operator is not a robot. He is a member of the community. He knows the people involved in the dispute. He has heard the gossip. He has his own suspicions, his own sense of who is probably in the right and who is in the wrong. It is entirely possible that these subconscious beliefs could guide his hands in minute, unintentional ways as he prepares the doses. It's like when you're rooting for a sports team, and you feel like you can somehow help them by leaning forward in your chair. The operator's deeply held belief in a person's guilt might translate into a fractional extra measure of benge, an act not of fraud but of his own intuition aligning with the expected will of the oracle. The central debate among anthropologists regarding the Azande oracle remains. Was it a genuine system of belief where outcomes were seen as unpredictable acts of a supernatural agent, or was it a form of social theater where a skilled operator consciously or not guided the results to produce socially acceptable verdicts? The truth likely lies somewhere in that murky, fascinating middle ground. A quirky bit of operator lore supports this. Some seasoned practitioners claimed that when they held the poisoned chicken, they could hear the oracle's decision in their hands, a subtle tremor that told them if the bird would live or die. This may have been a way for them to mystically articulate their own powerful, socially informed intuition. The operator, then, is far more than a simple functionary. He is the human interface for a divine machine, a man whose technical skill, social intelligence, and profound belief are all essential ingredients in the ritual. He is the guardian of the process. But this complex, expensive, and time-consuming process is not the only way the Azande seek to know the unknowable. For smaller questions, there are other, simpler oracles. The figure of the operator looms large in the drama of the poison oracle, a testament to the gravity and complexity of the ritual. But it would be a mistake to think that every Azande with a question has to go through such a formal, expensive, and high-stakes process. Benge is the high court, the ultimate authority. But you don't take a parking ticket dispute to the Supreme Court. For the endless stream of smaller, everyday uncertainties, the Azande have a whole toolkit of simpler, more accessible oracles. It's a tiered customer support system. The rubbing board is the FAQ page, the termites are the online chatbot, and Benge is when you finally have to call the manager. And the manager is a chicken. The simplest of these is the termite oracle, or Dakpa. Let us say you want to know if a planned journey to visit a relative will be safe and successful. You go to one of the large, distinctive termite mounds that dot the landscape. You find two small branches from two different kinds of trees. You designate one as the yes branch, the journey will be safe, and the other as the no branch, the journey will be dangerous. You force both branches deep into a hole in the termite mound and you leave them overnight. The next morning, you return to get the verdict. If the termites have eaten the yes branch but not the no one, your journey is approved. If they've eaten the no branch, you should postpone your trip. If they've eaten both or neither, the result is inconclusive. It's a slow, overnight process, the dial-up modem of the spirit world. But the termites are considered to be honest and unbiased consultants. Even more common, however, is the rubbing board oracle, the Iwa. This is the Azande equivalent of a personal organizer and pocket advisor. And a key historical fact is that most men owned one and consulted it multiple times a day. The Iwa itself is a quirky and charming object. a small table-like carving of wood, often in the shape of an animal like a crocodile or a pangolin. It has a flat, smooth top and comes with a separate, lid-like piece. To operate it, a man squats, holds the base firmly between his feet and applies a bit of fruit juice to the surface to make it slightly sticky. As he asks his question, he rubs the lid back and forth across the base. If the lid begins to stick, catching and jerking, the answer is yes. If it continues to slide smoothly, the answer is no. The Iwa is basically a magical Ouija board, but for one person and with a much clearer yes or no. Anthropologists still debate the psychological function of the lesser oracles. Were they simply a way to externalize decision-making and reduce anxiety over minor choices? Or did the operator's subconscious desires influence the physical outcome of the rubbing board, making it a form of self-interrogation? Whatever the mechanism, the hierarchy is clear and absolute. You might consult your Iwa to decide which path to take for your morning hunt. If the matter feels more important, you might confirm the Iwa's verdict with the termite oracle. But if the question involves another person, a suspicion of theft, a dispute over a debt, or if the lesser oracles give a confusing answer, you must escalate. Only Benj has the authority to issue a verdict that is binding on others. Its word can and will override any judgment from the termites or the rubbing board. These lesser oracles handle the private, low-stakes anxieties of daily life. Benj handles public order and high-stakes crises. It is this public, legal, and socially binding power that makes the Poison Oracle the true foundation of Azande society. And it was this incredible institution that a certain British anthropologist would encounter in the 1920s. A meeting that would forever shape the outside world's understanding of your reality. Your world, with its intricate web of beliefs and its perfectly logical, self-regulating system of justice, feels complete, timeless, and self-contained. But it is not. The world is changing, and one day, a new and peculiar type of white man arrives in your territory. He is not a soldier, not a government official demanding taxes, not a missionary trying to save your soul. He is something else entirely. He builds a homestead much like yours. He learns to speak your language, albeit with a strange accent, and he spends his days simply watching, listening, and asking endless questions. Suddenly there's a new guy in the village who doesn't know how to do anything useful, but wants to know why you do everything. He's basically a full-grown toddler with a notebook. This man's name is Edward Evan Evans Pritchard, and the work he is doing here in the late 1920s will become the single most important bridge between your reality and the outside world. He is a British social anthropologist, and the book he will eventually write, Witchcraft, Oracles, and Magic Among the Azande, published in 1937, is the foundational historical fact upon which nearly all external knowledge of your culture is built. It is one of the most famous anthropological studies of all time. Without his obsessive, detailed note-taking, this deep dive we are on right now would be impossible. From your perspective, he is an odd but mostly harmless neighbor. You see him learning to use a rubbing board oracle, clumsily trying to get a straight answer about where to find good hunting. You see him paying respected operators to consult the poison oracle on his behalf, asking questions that seem trivial to you just to understand the process. He isn't trying to judge or change your beliefs. He is trying, with an almost fanatical intensity, to understand them from the inside. His great intellectual achievement was to break from the colonial mindset that dismissed Azande beliefs as irrational or primitive. He took your worldview seriously. His approach was, in essence, to say, let us grant the initial Azande premise that witchcraft is a real and tangible force. If we accept that premise, does the rest of their behavior and belief system make logical sense? His resounding answer was yes. He demonstrated that your system of oracles is not a chaotic superstition, but a coherent and internally consistent mode of reasoning. It is not pre-logical, it is an alternative logic, and a highly sophisticated one at that. But for all his deep immersion, he remained an outsider. A quirky and revealing anecdote from his own writing is that when he tried to use the rubbing board oracle himself, he found he couldn't get the satisfying, decisive stick that indicated a yes vote from the oracle. He concluded it was because, in his heart of hearts, he didn't truly believe he was communicating with a mystical force. His Azande friends, who believed without question, could make it work perfectly. There is a gulf between academic understanding and lived reality, and even he could not cross it. Historians of anthropology still debate the legacy of Evans Pritchard's work. Was he a brilliant interpreter who gave the Azande a voice in Western scholarship? Or was his structural functionalist approach a product of its colonial era, freezing a dynamic culture into a timeless, primitive ethnographic present? What is certain is that his arrival, and the larger colonial presence he was a part of, marked the beginning of a profound and irreversible change. His careful study captured your world at a specific moment in time, just as the forces that would begin to dismantle it were gathering at the borders of Zandeland. The arrival of the anthropologist Evans Pritchard was a quiet, scholarly affair. The arrival of the men who followed him was not. As the early 20th century unfolds, your land is carved up and absorbed into the vast colonial empires of the Anglo-Egyptian Sudan and the Belgian Congo. Suddenly, there is a new and unassailable authority in your world. Your own chiefs and kings are still there, but they now answer to a British or Belgian district commissioner, a man who lives in a square house made of baked bricks and who presides over a court that operates on principles utterly alien to you. So there's a new legal system in town, and its first rule is that your most important legal system is illegal. It's a bit of a catch-22. This is the beginning of a profound and irreconcilable clash of legal realities. The foundation of your justice system is the oracle, a tool for discerning the hidden, spiritual causes of events. The foundation of the European system is a set of written laws concerned only with observable, physical facts. You go to the colonial officer with an airtight case confirmed by a chicken oracle, and he asks for witnesses and physical evidence. He just doesn't understand that the chicken is the witness and its corpse is the evidence. The central point of conflict, the issue on which neither side can comprehend the other, is witchcraft. In your world, the most serious crime imaginable is a witch killing someone with mangu. In the colonial world, witchcraft does not exist. Therefore, under their new laws, it is not a crime to be a witch. It is, however, a crime to accuse someone of being a witch. From the stroke of a pen in a distant European capital, your quest for justice against Akpara has been redefined as a criminal act. This leads to a key historical fact of this era. Both the British and Belgian colonial administrations actively sought to suppress the poison oracle. They viewed it as a barbaric superstition that led to violent accusations and social disruption. They passed laws making it illegal to own or administer benj. They would occasionally arrest oracle operators and try to force people to bring all of their disputes, from theft to murder, before the colonial courts. Historians of colonialism still debate whether the European suppression of the poison oracle was a well-intentioned, if culturally blind, attempt to impose a more rational form of justice, or a cynical political move to break the power of traditional authorities who derived their legitimacy from the oracle. Whatever the motive, the effort to eradicate the oracle was a spectacular failure. You and your fellow Azande do not simply abandon a belief system that explains and orders your entire universe because a man in khaki shorts tells you to. Instead, the oracle goes underground. Consultations that once might have been held openly are now done secretly at night, in the deep woods where a colonial patrol is unlikely to venture. Banning the oracle didn't get rid of it. It just turned every Zande oracle operator into the equivalent of a speakeasy bartender during Prohibition, serving up illegal truth in secret. For matters the colonial court could understand, a fistfight with witnesses, a cow wandering into another man's field, you might use their system. But for the things that truly mattered, the cause of a sickness, the presence of a witch, the rightful heir to a family, you continued to rely on the truth of benj. This created bizarre situations for colonial officials, a truly quirky aspect of this cultural clash. A Zande man might walk into a colonial court and confess to murdering his brother. The officer would begin the paperwork, only to discover the man was confessing because his brother had died of dysentery, and his own poison oracle had subsequently informed him that his unconscious witchcraft was the cause. The officer is left holding a confession to a supernatural crime that doesn't exist in his law books, delivered by a man who was 50 miles away when the victim died. This uneasy period of dual legal systems could not last forever. While the oracle survived, the colonial suppression began to chip away at its public authority and legitimacy, planting the first seeds of the doubt and change that would challenge the very foundations of your world. The clash between your Azande world and the colonial one created a society of two parts. You learned to navigate the European legal system when necessary, while keeping your true, deeply held beliefs alive in the shadows. But this uneasy truce could not hold. The forces of change, once unleashed, began to slowly and relentlessly wear away at the foundations of the Oracle's power. Its decline was not a sudden collapse, but a gradual fading, like a powerful dye diluted over time by the steady drip of new ideas, new technologies, and new ways of living. The first and most direct pressure was the continued colonial suppression. By being forced into secrecy, the Oracle lost its public majesty. A verdict delivered at midnight in a hidden clearing simply does not carry the same weight as one proclaimed openly under the authority of a powerful chief. It became a private affair rather than the central pillar of the state, and its authority, while still potent, began to shrink from the political to the personal. More corrosive than any law, however, was the arrival of Western medicine. A missionary sets up a small clinic a day's walk from your homestead. Your child is sick with a raging fever. You consult the Oracle, and it confirms your fear. Okapara's cooled witchcraft has grown hot again. But now, you have a second option. Alongside the traditional rituals to placate the witch, you also carry your child to the clinic, where a white doctor gives her an injection. The next day, the fever breaks. What do you believe? You know the ultimate cause was witchcraft, but you cannot deny the immediate effect of the medicine. It's hard to argue with the results. The Oracle can tell you who to blame for your malaria, but the little white pills actually make the fever go away. It's a real disruption to the traditional healthcare market. This is a profound challenge. For the first time, there is a competing and often highly effective system for explaining and resolving a major source of human misfortune: disease. A key historical fact is that the introduction of effective treatments for endemic diseases like sleeping sickness and malaria offered a powerful, pragmatic alternative to the purely spiritual explanations of the past. It didn't destroy the belief in witchcraft, but it created a new, parallel path for dealing with its consequences. At the same time, the entire economic and social landscape is being reshaped. The colonial government encourages the growing of cash crops like cotton. Young men can now leave their homesteads to work for wages on a road-building crew. This introduces money, a new kind of wealth completely disconnected from the traditional economy of spears, cattle, and kinship obligations. A man's ambition might shift from inheriting his father's status to saving up money to buy a manufactured bicycle. Suddenly, the most important question isn't who is the rightful heir, but who stole my bicycle? The chickens are having to learn a whole new area of jurisprudence. Sociologists of religion still debate whether the decline of the Oracle is a classic case of disenchantment, where scientific rationalism replaces magical beliefs, or if it represents enchantment, where the core beliefs, like witchcraft, persist but adapt and find new forms of expression in a changing world. A quirky example of this adaptation is that men began using their rubbing board oracles to ask questions about the new economy. Will I get a good price for my cotton at the market? They were using the old tools to navigate the new world, even as that new world was making the tool's ultimate authority, the Benj Oracle, less and less central. The Oracle didn't just vanish overnight. It was more like a slow, dignified retirement. By the time the colonial era ended in the mid-20th century, Benj no longer held its absolute monopoly on truth. Its sphere of influence had contracted, and new sources of power, knowledge, and justice were competing for the attention of your children and grandchildren. You are an old man now. The world of your youth, the world governed by the meticulous and absolute authority of Benj, has receded into the realm of memory, a story you tell your grandchildren who stare at glowing screens and listen to music from distant cities. The British and the Belgians have gone, replaced by the new governments of independent nations. The missionaries' clinics have become state-run hospitals. What remains of the great poison oracle, the bedrock of your reality for so many centuries? Physically, very little. The actual practice of consulting Benj is now exceedingly rare. Finding a genuine oracle operator today would be like trying to find someone who can still repair a VCR. It's a highly specialized skill for a technology that most people have forgotten. The specific forest creepers have become harder to find, and the unbroken chain of knowledge required to harvest, prepare, and administer the poison has frayed and snapped in many places. The colonial era laws forbidding the practice often remain on the books, a legal ghost haunting the new nations. But while the ritual itself has faded, the belief that undergirded it has proven far more resilient. Your grandchildren may go to school and learn about germ theory, but the belief in Mangu, in witchcraft as the ultimate cause of inexplicable suffering, remains a powerful force. This creates a profound and often dangerous modern dilemma. The accusations of witchcraft have not stopped. The jealousies, the suspicions, the need to find a cause for a sudden death or a failed business, all of that is still there. But the one institution that could handle these accusations with a final, binding, and generally non-violent authority is gone. It's like having a court system with no judge. A key historical fact from modern anthropological fieldwork in Zandeland is that this absence of a final arbiter can lead to more tragic outcomes. In the past, the oracle's verdict against Akpara led to a controlled, ritualized reconciliation. Today, a similar suspicion might fester, unproven, until it explodes in a direct, violent confrontation. The elegant social safety mechanism has been dismantled, but the dangers it was designed to contain have not disappeared. Still, the legacy of the oracle echoes in more subtle ways. The ingrained cultural logic of seeking a single, hidden, and personal cause for misfortune persists. The habit of thinking about problems in a binary, yes or no fashion, can still be seen in how disputes are framed. Contemporary anthropologists working in Central Africa still debate whether the persistence of witchcraft beliefs in the post-colonial era is a sign of cultural resilience and continuity, or a symptom of social stress and the failure of modern state institutions to provide security and justice for their citizens. In a quirky but telling shift, the function of the oracle, the need for an infallible external authority to resolve intractable problems, has sometimes been transferred to new institutions. A charismatic Christian pastor, believed to have the power of prophecy, might be consulted to root out the source of a family's troubles. His divine revelation serves the same purpose as the chicken's verdict once did. The role of infallible truth-teller is a tough one to fill, but there are always new applicants. The chicken has retired, but the pastor is now accepting questions. The great oracle of Benj is now a phantom, a powerful memory that shapes the contours of the present. Its absence is felt as much as its presence once was. It has left behind a world that still believes in witches, but has lost its most powerful tool for dealing with them. And this enduring legacy forces us, as outsiders, to ask one final deep question about the nature of truth itself. And so, we arrive at the end of our journey, leaving the world of the Azande and returning to our own. But what do we carry back with us? The story of the Poison Oracle is more than just a fascinating historical curiosity. It is a profound and unsettling mirror held up to our own ideas of truth, logic, and reality. It forces us to confront the question, what makes a belief system rational? Our world is built on a belief in coincidence, in the random, impersonal workings of chance. The most famous example, recorded by Evans Pritchard, is that of a man killed by a collapsing granary. You and I would look at the scene and offer a two-part explanation. First, termites had been eating away at the wooden supports for years, making the structure unstable. Second, the man just happened to be sitting under it at the exact moment a final gust of wind brought it down. It was a tragic accident. The Azande would agree with you completely about the termites. They are not blind to empirical cause and effect. But they would say this only explains half the picture. The termites explain how the granary fell. They do not explain the terrible coincidence of why it fell at that precise moment on that particular man. For this, the truly important question, there must be a second, deeper cause. And that cause is witchcraft. It's the ultimate, but why, question. Western science is brilliant at explaining the how, but the Zande system offers a much more dramatically satisfying who. Their world is one of complete accountability. There are no accidents, only actions. There are no coincidences, only conspiracies. The Poison Oracle, then, is the ultimate tool for navigating this world without chance. It is a machine for finding meaning in misfortune, for transforming the random chaos of life into a comprehensible social drama with actors and motives. Before we get too smug, let's remember our own superstitions: knocking on wood, avoiding black cats. We also have small rituals to manage the scary randomness of the universe. The Azande simply built an entire coherent judicial system around theirs. The ultimate philosophical debate sparked by the Azande oracle is whether it's possible to truly judge another culture's rationality from the outside, or if all systems of truth, including our own scientific and legal ones, are ultimately social constructs built on their own unprovable root assumptions. The oracle system is perfectly logical, provided you accept its initial premise that the world is driven by unseen personal forces. It is a closed loop, an unfalsifiable circle of belief, which is precisely what gives it its enduring power. The poison oracle isn't really about poison or chickens. It's about the universal human need to make a chaotic world feel like a story that has a plot, characters, and a clear resolution at the end. It is a powerful, elegant, and deeply human solution to the terror of a meaningless universe. And so, our time in the deep forests of Zandeland comes to a close. You can let the vivid images of the humid clearing, the patient operator, and the small fated chickens begin to soften and fade from your mind's eye. The intense logic of a world without coincidence can recede, allowing the familiar comforts of your own reality to return, settling around you like a familiar blanket: the low hum of the fan, the quiet sounds of your own home, the gentle weight of the coming sleep. These journeys into other ways of seeing are not meant to leave us unsettled, but to gently broaden the space within which we think and feel. To know that the world has been and still is interpreted in 1,000 different ways is a quiet reassurance that our own stories are but one part of a much larger, more mysterious, and more wonderful human tapestry. So now, you can just let the last of those thoughts drift away, like smoke rising from a dying fire into the vast and silent night. There is nothing left to analyze, nothing left to solve. There is only the stillness, the dark, and the gentle pull of your own rest.